Hey everybody, it's Shaman Sister Sin, and you are listening to the Meditations and More podcast here on the littleshaman.com, brought to you by Transrelational Healing, shamanspiritcenter.com, and littleshaman.org. That's me, the Little Shaman. Today I wanted to talk to you about something people often wonder about when dealing with narcissists, and that is, who do narcissists target? There's a lot of information out there about this subject, but the reality is, in some ways, narcissists target everybody, which is to say they really target nobody. They will go with whatever works, and in the end, they run the same game on everyone. That being said, there are definitely things that will catch a narcissist's attention. There are those who insist narcissists are intentionally hunting for these things. Some probably are and some probably are not, but it really doesn't matter in the end because it attracts their attention either way. Whether they're doing it on purpose or whether they're not is really irrelevant. People who attract a narcissist's attention are people who obviously don't have boundaries, people who respond to or make bids for attention, people who respond to negativity or engage in negativity routinely, people who respond to or make bids for sympathy, people who try to take care of other people or want other people to take care of them, people who take more responsibility than they should for relationships, for other people, just in general, and people who put themselves aside for others or expect other people to do that for them. People might find this list a little bit surprising because most information states that narcissists are attracted to people who are very successful or very attractive or have things that the narcissist doesn't have. That's certainly true, but it's important to remember that literally everybody has things that the narcissist does not have because this literally refers to anything. If you have a pair of shoes that they don't have, this triggers and provokes envy in narcissists. That is not usually enough in the end to attract their attention, and it definitely is not enough to hold their attention. They are looking for more than just things. Lack of boundaries is a waving green flag to narcissists. People who don't hold boundaries against the behavior of other people and don't place enough boundaries on their own behavior are often targets for these personalities. Examples of a lack of boundaries in this context may be attempting to caretake other people, sharing too much information too early, trusting other people inappropriately, investing too much in external validation and what other people think, taking responsibility for the problems, actions, or emotions of other people, being overly conscientious, people-pleasing behaviors. These things signal to narcissists that the person engaging in them may be willing to take care of them, essentially, and that is what they're actually looking for in many situations. They want someone who will give them an unconditional relationship where they're not held responsible or accountable for anything, and where the other person carries all of the burden. They may not consciously realize that, of course. They may definitely be attracted initially by things that are more superficial, such as money or looks. But without these other things, there's no reason for the narcissist to be truly interested because the relationship won't work. They're not going to get what they're looking for. A person with strong boundaries does not appeal to narcissists because a person with strong boundaries cannot be manipulated to do the things that a narcissist needs from a relationship. Again, the narcissist may or may not consciously realize that, but the fact still remains that the relationship is not going to go anywhere. That's not to say that narcissists are not attracted to strong or fiery people. For example, on the contrary, they can be, and many are, but a person can be strong and fiery but still have poor boundaries. So it's important to understand exactly what we mean whenever we're saying not having strong boundaries. We're not talking about someone who is not a strong or fiery person. The reality is these relationships violate boundaries from the very beginning. Love bombing violates boundaries. And for example, a person with strong boundaries is likely to reject love bombing behavior. Instead of finding it flattering or exciting, they tend to experience it as intrusive and overbearing. They find someone wanting to monopolize their time off-putting or even scary. They find someone heaping disproportionate praise and compliments on them unsettling, and they react to someone reporting such intense emotion so quickly with extreme caution, if not outright suspicion. The relationship can't get off the ground because this immediate rejection of the narcissist stops it. They might keep trying in an attempt to wear the person down, but if a person has strong boundaries, it's not going to go anywhere because the person with strong boundaries prevents that. Becoming more assertive if they need to do so and letting the narcissist know in no uncertain terms that their behavior is unwanted and unacceptable. The narcissist in your life may even have stories of people with strong boundaries, casting these people in a very negative light and depicting them as cold, cruel, selfish, uncaring, or otherwise wrong or bad somehow. A lot of the things that attract a narcissist's interest can be categorized broadly under being overly conscientious. Trying to be so fair to other people that you are unfair to yourself, trying to be, quote, nice to people instead of being honest, trying so hard not to hurt someone's feelings or upset them that you agree to do things that you really don't want to do, trying so hard not to judge that you ignore your own basic observations about somebody, trying too hard to give someone the benefit of the doubt, even in situations where you should not do that or where you already have. Trying so hard to understand where someone is coming from that it leads to accepting or even making excuses for someone's harmful behavior. Trying so hard to be forgiving that you end up tolerating ongoing mistreatment and ongoing harmful behavior. These things can be exploited by narcissists, and many times when this is discussed, it's described as the narcissist targeting people's light and their goodness. The reality is that these things are not actually examples of goodness at all. They are conditioned responses. Certainly, these things as concepts are wonderful, but when taken to extremes in practice, they're harmful. Most of us try to be fair, for example, but there is never a situation where you're supposed to be so fair to other people that you're being unfair to yourself. Or a situation where you're supposed to just tolerate harmful behavior from other people because they have a really good reason for being abusive, or for any other reason for that matter. There is never a situation where you are supposed to act against your own best interest, ever. Despite what some people may believe, this is not ever anybody's quote-unquote true nature, because to act against one's own best interest is not natural for any organism. The biological imperative is survival. Now, often people will then say, but that's how I learned to survive. And that is how we know it's a conditioned response, not their quote-unquote true nature. The true nature of all organisms is to get out of dangerous, harmful situations. Narcissists are seeking people who will routinely act against their own best interest, because if somebody won't do that, they're not going to stay in the relationship. Why would they? The relationship is one-sided, toxic, and harmful. The only reason anyone ever does stay in these relationships besides fear is because they've been conditioned to believe that their responsibility to the narcissist is more important than their responsibility to themselves. Many narcissists don't realize they're looking for that in other people, of course. They're not the most self-aware people on the planet. However, the relationship literally cannot function any other way. It cannot function if the person will not do that. The narcissist views a failure to do it as a deal breaker, proof that the other person does not care about them. And of course, even if the narcissist doesn't end a relationship under these circumstances, the other person will, because they refuse to act against their own best interest, and staying in the relationship requires them to do that. People who respond to bids for attention will also attract a narcissist's interest, as will people who engage in bids for attention themselves. Attention is the currency of the pathologically narcissistic personality. People who give attention or seek attention are always vulnerable to narcissists and their manipulations. This is because in the narcissist's estimation, there is perhaps no more valuable commodity. If you give them attention, they will continue to seek it from you. It's kind of like finding a fishing hole where you know you are guaranteed to catch a fish every time you go there. So when you go fishing, why wouldn't you go there? People with strong boundaries thwart these attempts by not responding to them at all. They're like a dry fishing hole. For example, if a person with strong boundaries has a narcissistic sibling and the sibling makes cryptic comments during a conversation, they ignore that. They don't follow up on it. They don't try to figure out what it means. Or if they see a dramatic social media post from somebody, they don't engage. They don't react to trolls, online or in real life. When someone becomes offended and storms off in a huff, people with strong boundaries don't run after them asking what's wrong. This rejects that bid for attention, and as a result, it dries up a narcissist's interest. They are not interested in people who don't react to their BS. People with strong boundaries also don't do these things themselves or engage in passive attempts to get people's attention. These things invite toxic personalities, especially narcissists, who are usually very willing to give people attention in order to get some in return. This is related to something else on our list, which is responding to or engaging in negativity. This is not about toxic positivity. This is not a toxic positivity thing. This is about actual negativity. Negativity attracts narcissists. There's a whole podcast on this channel about that. When you think back about conversations with this person, you may very well find that the best conversations you ever had with them was where you were both talking about something you don't like. They are often happy to bash, berate, degrade, make fun of, gossip about, or even attack others, including people they don't know. If we are having a bad day and we decide to vent our anger on social media, for example, or if we feel that we really need to talk about something bad that happened to us, this can unwittingly invite the attention of narcissists in a big way, because this is the only category of emotions they really seem to be able to understand, and they are happy to commiserate. Or on the flip side, they are happy to engage in some virtue signaling to somehow make themselves look better, either at your expense or by comparing themselves to whoever or whatever that you're angry about and that you're talking about. They may even offer to act as a flying monkey on your behalf, or do so of their own volition to try to impress you with how strongly they've taken your side. Unfortunately, many people do find this impressive or flattering, at least initially, but the reality is that it's toxic and it's inappropriate. When we have strong boundaries, we don't vent in unsafe places or to unsafe people, and we find the level of quote-unquote support that we receive from narcissists in these situations unsettling, because it's often inappropriate and disproportionate. It's more about venting negative emotions and punishing other people than it ever is about support. It's the same with anybody who chronically shares negative stuff, even when it's sincere, whether they're a narcissist or not. We need to have boundaries around offering support appropriately if we decide that it's appropriate to offer any support at all. To not do so creates a vulnerability to narcissists and other toxic personalities who use things like that as a way to find good fishing holes. And again, it's important to remember that offering unboundaried support is not a virtue. It's not a badge of honor. Having boundaries around these things is not doing something wrong. Affix oxygen mask to self first before helping others, right? You can't pour from an empty cup. Having boundaries keeps these interactions safe. Not having them invites toxicity, because there are people who, intentionally or unintentionally, will use your well-meaning attempts at offering support to push you into a role that you do not want to be in. It is the same with bids for sympathy. We need to be careful engaging in or responding to bids for sympathy, because just like engaging with negativity, this gives narcissists a way in. These are all things that narcissists can take advantage of because they are predicated on the idea that people are being sincere, and many of them are, but some are not, and that's why we need boundaries. All of these things signal to narcissists that a person is willing to take responsibility for things that don't belong to them, which is exactly what they're looking for. They may not view it that way. For example, with making bids for sympathy, narcissists may view it as finding someone to lean on, or a cry for help, or seeking support, and in some ways, that's probably sincere as far as how they view their own motives. However, in practice, it's usually much, much more than that. For instance, genuine cries for help don't involve trying to manipulate emotional responses out of people with stories that are exaggerated or not even true. People who are genuinely seeking support don't need others to bash or even attack the person that they're angry at or upset with. Having someone to lean on generally doesn't require that person to take responsibility for someone's emotions or feelings or anything else. This is the situation that narcissists create because they become dependent immediately on the supply from the person offering the sympathy, and because they can't manage or deal with their own emotions. People who are sincerely offering support in these situations often find themselves dragged into drama or problems, ensnared in situations they don't want to be in, pushed into a role that they never wanted or didn't anticipate, and now feel unable to get out of without there being some kind of huge problem. Even when we are the ones initially receiving sympathy and support from what appears to be a well-meaning person, this can be the outcome when they are a narcissist who took this as a way in and has quickly become the one who requires the continuous support. Having general boundaries around how we offer emotional support to others and how we receive it helps enormously with making sure that this does not happen. Similarly, we need to have boundaries around caretaking behavior, both our own caretaking behavior and that of other people toward us. Caretaking in adult relationships creates an unequal dynamic, and as such, it generally leads to unhealthy outcomes. As adults, each person in the relationship, no matter what kind of relationship it is required to take care of themselves. They are required to address their own problems, fulfill their own needs, support themselves, take responsibility for their own emotions, choices, behaviors, make sure they're not actively harming other people. When someone refuses to do these things, they are placing that burden on the other person and making them the only adult in the relationship. When that person accepts the burden, they're accepting that role, which not only places too much on their own shoulders, but it diminishes the other person because they're not being treated as an adult or expected to behave as one. They are being allowed to remain in the relationship, but to continue to function below the level of what is required from an adult, as if they actually are a child. This undermines the relationship completely, with enabling and codependent dynamics, fostering an environment where mistreatment and toxicity can run rampant. Ironically, many narcissists will accuse other people of treating them like children, when the reality is that these folks simply cannot meet the basic requirements of being an adult. Placing adult expectations on them results in failure and disappointment. As we discussed in the video, Damned If You Do, many narcissists want the benefits of being an adult without any of the responsibilities. It's as if their idea of what being an adult entails is what children think being an adult is like, where you just do whatever you want whenever you want, and you stay up all night, and you eat ice cream for breakfast, and you never have to do anything you don't want to do. Narcissists end up being interacted with like children because they are behaving like children, and they resent that enormously. They believe the problem is you. Adults who cannot show up in relationships as adults should not be in adult relationships. It's that simple. Allowing another adult to be dependent on you in this way is not helping them. And for those who participate in these dynamics, but then they get upset when they feel like they're the only adult in the relationship, you are the only adult in the relationship. That's the role you accepted by continuing to engage and participate in this dynamic. That doesn't excuse this person's behavior, of course. Nothing does. But if you choose to have a relationship or interact with this person, that's the way it's going to be. It is what it is. Either accept that and stay, or accept that and leave, but don't keep expecting it to change. That's not how this works. This is where having good, solid boundaries around relationships and what we expect from other people is a huge help. When we have strong boundaries, we don't accept responsibility for other people in this way. We don't participate in codependent dynamics. We don't have relationships with people who cannot show up in these relationships as adults. And we don't have them with anybody, including family. There are many people dealing with parents who do not behave as adults, for example, and having solid boundaries helps you protect yourself in these situations. You do not have to just put up with it. You do have a choice. You can put limits and boundaries on the relationship. When we stop taking responsibility for the thoughts, feelings, choices, and outcomes of other people, it becomes easier to draw boundaries because we can see more clearly what we're responsible for and what we're not. We have a responsibility to the feelings of other people. We are not responsible for them. This means that we have a responsibility to be considerate of the feelings of other people, but we're not responsible for fixing or managing the way others feel, and they are not responsible for these things for us. Dealing with narcissists usually causes these lines to get very blurred because narcissists do not have boundaries in this area, and often neither do the people around them. Narcissists feel that others are responsible for their feelings. For example, they require others to provide reassurance and validation to keep them feeling good, and they view any deviation from this as an attack and a failure on the other person's part. This is why if you try to bring up an issue or anything that makes a narcissist feel even slightly uncomfortable in any way, you might be accused of abusing them. They believe it's your responsibility to manage their emotions for them in this way, and you failed at it. Clearly, because they feel discomfort. Clearly, you failed. Similarly, they generally refuse to take responsibility for their feelings and reactions, requiring other people to change all of their behavior in order to prevent the narcissist from experiencing discomfort. Again, they believe it is your responsibility to manage these emotions for them in this way, and you failed. You're attacking them. You're mistreating them. When you fail in these areas, and you will, because it's not possible to manage the emotions of another person in this way, you will be punished and you will be blamed. There is no way to prevent this from happening because what you're being asked to do is impossible. The way to deal with this, if you cannot exit the relationship or the situation just yet, is to understand that it's impossible and therefore not your problem. All you can do is take responsibility for your own actions and your own choices. You cannot also take responsibility for the other person's reactions and choices because you have no control over these things at all. Anyone who tells you that you do is either wrong or lying. Everyone has a choice regarding how they will react to things, and their choice is based on their stuff, not yours. For example, if you tell somebody "fuck you," and in reaction they slap you, you are responsible for saying what you said, but you are not responsible for their choice to slap you, period. This is a favorite claim of abusers, and it's false. They could have chosen to react some other way, but they didn't. That's on them. They are responsible for that, whether they agree with this or not. Everybody is responsible for their own actions. When we know this, it prevents people from using this kind of emotional manipulation against us successfully. It prevents them twisting us all up inside and confusing us. We can see that we did not fail in the way that they're telling us we did because we're being asked to do something that's impossible, which is the whole reason why it isn't our responsibility. It can't be because we have no way to control it. If we did, we would be able to change it, and we can't. Someone else saying that they think we should be able to change it has nothing to do with reality. You don't have to give people what they want or what they think you should give them just because they want it or just because they think you should. You don't have to do that. Knowing this also helps us stand in our own power because we can see that we are in control of our own actions and choices. We might have made choices that we felt were easier at the time, or to try to avoid mistreatment or to avoid discomfort, but we always had a choice. This is the key to the whole thing. For example, people have asked, how is it that I feel like the narcissist can control me, but I can't control them? The answer is that narcissists are not actually controlling anybody. People are agreeing. They're agreeing to do what the narcissist wants, often because narcissists react aggressively and horribly to people not agreeing. It feels easier and safer to just agree to do it. It's not easier and safer, actually, because it reinforces the dynamic, and over time it just makes things worse, but it feels easier and safer in the short term, in the moment, to just give in and agree to what the narcissist wants. The reason you can't control narcissists in this same way is because they will not agree. It's as simple as that. They will not agree to do what other people want. Where you are agreeing to do it out of love or guilt or obligation or fear or because you're trying to keep the peace or whatever, they will not do that. That's it. It is as simple as that. The reality is then, the perception that narcissists are controlling others or controlling anything is completely predicated on people agreeing to do what the narcissist wants. If they don't, the whole illusion falls apart. That's a big reason narcissists react so strongly to the word no. It demonstrates that they really have no power at all, because if a person says no and sticks to that, the narcissist can't change it. They can't control it, and they know that. All they can do is attempt to convince, bully, or otherwise force people into agreeing to do what they want. If that fails, that's the end of it. This is the crux of the entire thing, and it is the real answer to the question of who narcissists target, if it can be said that they target anybody. It really has nothing to do with external trappings or material things. It isn't really about kindness or goodness or taking people's kindness for weakness or anything like that. Whether this is conscious or not, narcissists are not interested in people who understand their own power, period. It can come across in different ways. They might say they find these people rude, mean, stupid, uncaring, have a superiority complex, intimidating, scary, cold, hard, or any other negative impression. But the real reason is that people who see and understand their own power do not buy into the illusion that a narcissist has any power over them. Pathologically narcissistic personalities are not interested in relationships with people who can see through the illusion, or even worse, who never buy into it at all. Even more to the point, they're not really capable of functioning in that kind of relationship anyway. Narcissists need people around them who will take the blame, take the fall, take the responsibility for everything. This is absolutely a requirement for having any kind of relationship with a narcissist. And if you think about whatever relationship with whatever narcissist in your life, you will see that this is 1,000% true. People who recognize and own their own power are simply not good candidates for this because they won't do it. They do not buy into the idea that they're somehow responsible for this adult person, or the premise that the narcissist is the only person who has any power in the relationship or in the situation. They don't buy into that. In the book Needful Things, the evil entity disguised as a shopkeeper was asked why he didn't just approach the sheriff himself. His answer was that in every town there are a few people they call a hard sell. Meaning he doesn't even try to sell his poison items to these people because they will just never buy them. Or by extension, what he's really selling. Now, a hard sell is actually an aggressive sales approach, not a person who won't buy. But to borrow the book's usage of this phrase, narcissists come to view people who own and recognize their own power as a hard sell. They will never buy what the narcissist is selling, no matter how aggressive the narcissist's approach is. And in order for the relationship to work, the other person or people must do that. They must buy into the illusion, or there is no illusion. It's a pretty neat trick on the surface of the thing, but it's inherently weak in a basic fundamental way because it requires the other person to agree to go along with it in order for it to work. It's like that picture of the 800-pound police horse whose reins are tied to a stupid plastic lawn chair. If you remember, in the last episode, we talked a little bit about the Wizard of Oz. In the Wizard of Oz, when the Good Witch told Dorothy, in order to get home, all you have to do is tap your heels together 3 times. Dorothy said, well, why didn't you tell me this before? And the Good Witch says, because you wouldn't have believed me. You had to find out for yourself. Sometimes we're only being controlled because we think we are. Sometimes the change that we struggle against the most are only in our mind. I hope this clears a few things up for you. As always, I look forward to your comments, questions, and suggestions, so please keep those coming. I take appointments online over the phone, via text, via messenger, via email, and through Skype and Zoom for clients worldwide. So if you are interested in speaking with me one-on-one, you can visit littleshaman.org to do that. I have several books in publication, so if you're interested in picking up a copy of those, you can visit littleshaman.org to do that, or you can find them on Amazon.com. I teach workshops, seminars, and clinics, so if you're interested in seeing what we are running this month, you can visit littleshaman.org to do that. And if you're interested in joining our support group with access to exclusive content, weekly support meetings, and more, you can visit littleshaman.org to do that as well. You've been listening to the Meditations and More podcast here on the littleshaman.com, brought to you by Transrelational Healing, shamanspiritcenter.com, and littleshaman.org. That's me, Little Shaman. May the Great Spirit bless you. Have a beautiful day.
If you've been struggling through dealing with or recovering from an unhealthy relationship with a narcissist or other toxic personality, the Little Shaman has a catalog of over 500 YouTube videos designed to support your journey from discovery to recovery. You can also find additional resources on the Little Shaman website, including tools, courses, workshops, a support group with weekly meetings, and one-on-one appointments with the Little Shaman that are open to clients worldwide. There's even an AI chatbot built and trained exclusively by the Little Shaman using her work that can answer questions 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. For more information, visit littleshaman.org. You can listen to The Little Shaman wherever you find your favorite podcasts.